Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Today we continue our Clone Wars history series. In our last episode, Viceroy Nute Gunray once again escapes from the grasp of the Republic thanks to the actions of Sith assassin Asajj Ventress. But the Viceroy hasn't made it all the way back to safety just yet, and the Jedi are in hot pursuit. Kit Fisto and his former Padawan and talking fishman, Adar Veb, follow the tracking beacon within the stolen Republic ship that Ventress and Gunray used to escape from captivity. It leads them to the Vesak system in the Outer Rim. It was a relatively unremarkable system, but on its third moon, Vesak 3, General Grievous had a secret lair. Having no knowledge of this, Kit Fisto and the Republic forces work their way into his lair thinking that they are about to run into Nute Gunray, when instead they only find a hologram of him, at which point Count Dooku appears, explaining that this wasn't a trap but actually a test for General Grievous. He wanted the Republic forces to ambush him so that Grievous could prove his worthiness to the separatist cause. What can I say? The Sith have some very weird and out-of-the-box and unorthodox methods of training their employees. Things get stranger as the Republic forces venture deeper into the base and find odd statues of the Kaleesh warrior. The Kaleesh were originally from a wild space planet known as Kalee. They were a warrior species known for their cruelty and lack of mercy. General Grievous was originally one of these Kaleesh warriors. At the time, the Kaleesh were fighting a war against a more technologically advanced insect species known by the Kaleesh as Hook, or soulless bugs. These soulless bugs were trying to enslave the Kaleesh, and despite the Kaleesh's warrior spirit, the Hook were winning because they had things like starships and tanks. It was just very one-sided, and millions of Kaleesh ended up getting enslaved. But Grievous and a small band of elite Kaleesh warriors were able to turn the tide against the Hook. But during his single-minded crusade against the Hook, he loses one of his close friends to the insects, which starts to drive him towards madness. Eventually, Grievous manages to kick the Hook off of their planet, and then starts invading the Hook homeworld, where he starts burning down population centers, at which point the Hook approach the Republic for aid and help. Now, for the most part, the Republic didn't get involved beyond the mid-rim of the galaxy because they simply didn't have a standing army or resources to do much anyway. On top of that, nothing in the Outer Rim usually was worth the journey in the eyes of core world politicians, which is why the Kaleesh were left to be enslaved by the Hook in the first place. But for some reason, the Republic decided to intervene in this situation and sent Jedi Knights to Hook and imposed sanctions on the Kalee, which destroyed their economy and imposed great tribulation on Grievous's people. With their entire planet on the verge of bankruptcy, Grievous decides to cut a deal with the intergalactic banking clan's leader, Sam Hill. In return for debt relief, all he really needed to do was become an enforcer or a debt collector for the IGBC, which was actually a pretty good deal for him. It was gainful employment, which included multiple opportunities to smash people's heads in. At the same time, he could save his entire planet from starvation and humiliation. The only problem was the IGBC wouldn't hire other Kaleesh and wanted Grievous to work with their new IG-100 combat droid platform. Grievous's Kaleesh warrior mentality saw the droids as inferior and way too predictable, but eventually he began training the IG-100s to mimic his movements, and they became much more dangerous. For a while things were good, and the banking clan was happy, and Grievous was happy as well. But then the Hook attacked the Kaleesh colony and started desecrating their sacred burial grounds. The Republic, of course, did nothing to stop this. So Grievous broke his contract with the IGBC and went on a soulless bug rampage. Now, originally Sam Hill, the leader of the IGBC, wanted to assassinate General Grievous for his disobedience. But because he was a confidant of the secret separatist movement at the time, he came up with a plan with Darth Plagueis and Sidious to make Grievous an enforcer for the movement and ultimately a slave. So Count Dooku sabotaged Grievous's personal ship, and when en route to the Hook homeworld, his ship broke apart in atmosphere. Count Dooku found Grievous in the wreckage of his ship and used the Force to keep him alive long enough so that they could turn him into a cyborg. If this sounds like Darth Vader's origin story, you're absolutely right. This was one of the favorite ways for the Sith to create dependable slave warriors. As a matter of fact, many of the cybernetic technology used on Vader were first pioneered by technicians that worked on Grievous. And when he finally recovers from his gruesome surgery, he's told by the Sith that the Republic were the ones responsible for shooting down his shuttle. Grievous was now just a pair of eyeballs, a brain, and a few other organs. His entire flesh, body, and bone structure was more or less gone. One interesting thing that the Sith tried to do in order to preserve him was by giving him a blood transfusion from the deceased body of Separattist. Although it ultimately failed to make Grievous Force sensitive, it did keep him alive long enough to survive the operation. The one side effect of this entire transformation was that the Cyborg now had asthma. And yes, this is canon. Most likely, the Sith gave Grievous asthma in order to give him a weakness that they can use in case he got out of control. If you really think about it, it wasn't necessary for a cyborg like him to have actual lungs or even a heart. These things could have been replaced by machines, and as we find out later on, organs are very flammable. That is just messed up, Obi-Wan. Anyway, they capped Grievous's abilities in the same way Palpatine would cap Vader's potential by giving him a generic Walmart brand version of a cyborg suit, which not only was inefficient, but caused significant chafing on his stubs, also canon. Grievous was able to overcome his asthma and became a monster on the battlefield. As a matter of fact, he was active as early as the Battle of Geonosis, but no one really knew he existed because no one ever survived any encounters with him until later on in the war. Anyway, back to Vesak 3, Kit Fisto and his former apprentice Nadar Veb were completely unprepared to take on the Cyborg, but with the help of some clones they managed to ambush Grievous, and Kit Fisto actually does cut the general in half. But this was Grievous's home and he was familiar with every nook and cranny in the facility. He also had repair facilities, which meant that after he escaped the Republic task force, he immediately started installing a new set of legs. Grievous, being the paranoid psychopathic warrior that he was, set up his entire base on Vesak 3 as a funhouse. But instead of being full of fun, it was full of pain and tears. General Grievous locks in the Jedi and clones into the facility and then starts systematically hunting them down one by one in the most creative ways possible. At the same time, Grievous sends out his Magna Guard droids to take out the Republic shuttle and Jedi starfighters that brought the task force onto the planet in the first place. That was kind of the interesting thing about Grievous. He had a really good grasp on tactics. He could always sense when he was going to lose, which is why he was able to survive for so long. He was never too proud to retreat. But when he knew victory was within his grasp, he made sure to hunt down every single individual. It was kind of just the way he did things. Which is why when Grievous won, no Republic survivors were left, further building up the General's mystique. He's kind of like that guy who plays Grand Theft Auto and needs to get 100% completion. Which means he has to find all the special packages and do all the graffiti, or maybe a more apt comparison is he's the kind of total war player that even after a victory is declared, micromanages his troops to hunt down the routing forces so that literally no one can escape. So back to Vesak. The clones are dropping left and right. Some fall into a pit of molten lava, others are killed by Grievous's pet dog, Gore. And by dog, I don't actually mean a dog, it's more like a velociraptor crossed with the alien from Aliens. But Kit Fisto, the Rasu Jedi, does what Jedi do best and eventually delimbs Gore and kills Grievous's dog, which really pisses him off. By this point, Grievous has his legs back but decides why go confront the Republic task force when they can fight their way to him. At the same time, Count Dooku calls Grievous and basically explains how this all was a test and how he didn't really trust in his abilities anymore after his recent failures. I mean, the Sith are just great managers. They really know how to cultivate a healthy and good relationship between employers and employees. At this point, the two Jedi finally reach Grievous, but Kit Fisto was cut off from his former Padawan. Nadar Veb was an average Jedi Knight, but he had similar qualities to Anakin Skywalker. He was brash, confident, and wanted to kill things. While he was good-intentioned like Anakin, he was far less competent as a fighter. Ultimately, Grievous defeats him with an extra arm. He pulls a blaster and shoots the young fish Jedi, sending him to sleep with his other fellow fish people. Kit Fisto doesn't let the death of his Padawan get to him. He's quite a wise Jedi and realizes he's outgunned. And luckily, his astromech has saved his starfighter from Grievous's droids previously, and he attempts to escape the moon and get more reinforcements. Grievous is there to meet him on the landing platform, and the two duel for a while, but ultimately, Kit Fisto manages to hold his own and get away. Grievous contacts Dooku about the completion of the test, and Dooku, like your typical Asian parent, tells Grievous that there's room for improvement. And guys, that is our video for today. Now, if you think this relationship between Grievous and Count Dooku is a bit messed up, well, that is just how the Sith treat their underlings. That's how they find agents and vet and test people out. And if you look at the ancient Sith orders, this is actually how their schools were set up. I mean, there was a lot of competition and people died all the time. And when Palpatine eventually sets up the Galactic Empire, the Imperial Academies kind of had the Sith ideology. Now, competition is great, but in a lot of these Imperial Academy situations, you literally had students trying to kill each other, which is not great. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button, and as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.